This video was made possible through the support of my patrons. In October 1964, story editor David Whittaker left Doctor Who in the capable hands of his successor, Dennis Spooner. However, no sooner had the door shut on his way out, he was invited back in to write another script in a freelance capacity. With a lot of sci-fi stories clogging up the production line, Verity Lambert commissioned a 4-part historical on basically whatever Whittaker wanted to write about, with his finger landing firmly on the Third Crusade in the 12th century, as well as the potentially incestuous relationship between King Richard and his sister Joan. Not too much more is known about the creative development of this 4-parter, The Crusade, and unfortunately 2 of its 6 episodes are missing from the BBC archives. However, there is a reconstruction of the missing episode 2 and 4 by Loose Cannon, and a Telesnap reconstruction was included as part of the recent Season 2 Blu-ray collection set. I watched both of these for the purposes of this video. Amazingly, thanks to the reconstruction of The Reign of Terror in Season 1, this story breaks a 44 episode streak where you can watch from the Keys of Marinus Part 1 to the end of Part 1 of The Crusade without needing to rely on any telesnaps. But anyway, the TARDIS lands in the middle of an attempted ambush of King Richard outside of Jaffa in 12th century Palestine by the opposing Saracen. It's the Third Crusade, as Christian crusaders are attempting to take the holy city of Jerusalem. Again, the Doctor, Vicky, Ian and Barbara get separated, with Barbara kidnapped by the Saracen and the rest being taken in by King Richard as they attempt to get Barbara back. And honestly, in terms of what's actually motivating the plot, that's kind of it. Barbara gets kidnapped in Part 1, and the remaining episodes revolve around Ian trying to get her back. Were it not for the fact that the group aren't together, there's nothing to really stop them from just getting back in the TARDIS and letting this historical conflict play out. However, with Ian being the most physically fit of the group, and with him trying to compete for being the main character of the show, he goes on an adventure across Palestine to try and get Barbara back, while the Doctor bears witness to the conflicts taking place within the Crusaders. Meanwhile, Barbara is in the court of the Sultan Saladin, who treats her pretty well, all things considered, but she finds herself kidnapped, within the kidnapping, by the Emir el-Akir, because Barbara humiliated him when brought before Saladin. Now, The Crusade is a tough story for me to review because, well, I don't really have that much to say, but I don't want to undersell its qualities or give the impression that the serial doesn't have anything on its mind, because I get the impression that David Whittaker has given a lot of thought and work to the script, especially the dialogue, with some of it actually written in iambic pentameter.
My friends cut down about my ears or stolen. My armies roust about the streets and clutter up the streets of Jaffa with the garbage of their vices. And now I learn my brother John thirsts after power, drinking great draughts of it, though it's not his to take. He's planning to usurp my crown, and trades with my enemy, Philip of France. Trades! A tragedy of fortunes, and I am too much beset by them. A curse on this, 1,000 curses!
The dialogue itself is the crown jewel of The Crusade, so even with the plot itself moving at what feels like a glacial pace, it's still engaging to watch, though part of me can imagine younger audiences in the 1960s tuning out. For me, part of that, and I'm aware that I'm repeating myself after my review of The Reign of Terror, but if you don't know what the Crusades are, if you don't know what King Richard is after, or who Saladin is before going into this serial, you're going to be totally lost. All the story communicates is, there's some sort of war, King Richard wants to see Jerusalem, they hate Saladin, and that's honestly it. It feels like maybe Dennis Spooner and David Whittaker wrote themselves into a corner by establishing in Vicky's introduction that she is knowledgeable about history, because it means that the Doctor, Ian and Barbara don't have anyone to organically exposit to. Vicky already seems clued up about what's going on, but the audience, they're out of luck.
Of course. Did you hear what that man called? Called him? Saracen. Malik Wick. Yes, that was the name the Saracens had for King Richard Coeur de Lion. Malik Wick.
So we're in the Holy Land?
Now, those who do have a passing knowledge of the Third Crusade will appreciate how in depictions of King Richard, played here by Julian Glover, and Saladin, played by Bernard Kay, They are much more nuanced here than many other Western depictions of the Crusades up until this point, to the extent where they pronounce Saladin's name correctly. A low bar, but this story reaches it. Saladin as a leader is a lot more compassionate to Barbara than you'd expect, and he's also someone of great knowledge of culture, able to match Barbara's references easily.
If Sir William is to be returned, he must make good report of our mercy. Perhaps that is the factor in your favor.
I don't believe you're as calculating as that.
Then learn more of me. You must serve my purpose, or you have no purpose. Grace my table tonight, in more suitable clothes. If your tales beguile me, you shall stay and entertain.
Like Scheherazade.
Over whose head hung sentence of death.
And on the other hand, as is befitting of the Crusaders, King Richard is quick to anger and depicted as quite petty. Now, it's not one-sided where one side is obviously good, one side's obviously bad, but the shades of grey depicted in this serial are appreciated. Though it's also worth pointing out that a lot of the cast members in this serial are Caucasian and their skin has been darkened, akin to blackface. Obviously, this can make for some really uncomfortable viewing. It's a bit like last season's Marco Polo, where the practice itself is wrong, but giving the story the barest amount of credit, at least it doesn't devolve into parody or mockery with how its characters are portrayed. Anyway, back to the review. It's just a shame there's not a lot of time dedicated to these two main historical figures, as Ian ends up getting caught in misadventures and Barbara flees from hiding place to hiding place after part 1, meaning the audience don't really get much time to settle in one location or with one group of characters. I didn't properly count or anything, but I think Saladin is in only 3 scenes in this entire story. The serial just sort of hobbles around, buying time for part 4, where the factions can reunite and the Doctor and the gang can make a beeline for the TARDIS again. And here's where we hit another snag with this story. With Ian gallivanting across Palestine, the Doctor and Vicky find themselves in Jaffa, with King Richard, his sister Joanna, played by Jean Marsh, and the rest of his men. And credit where credit is due, there is some really terrifically executed stuff in these scenes. Julian Glover and Jean Marsh allegedly really tried to lean in heavily to the incestuous undertones between the siblings in their scenes. Unfortunately, most of their scenes together have now been lost, though it's thought not a lot of that made it to camera in the first place because of outside forces. William Hartnell thought the subtext was inappropriate for a children's show and complained, and allegedly, Verity Lambert even took Glover and Marsh to one side and said, quote, "Don't think I don't know what you're doing." So in the end, they were forced to tone it down. Anyway, just like in real life, King Richard offers Joanna to Saladin's brother, Safadin, as a bride in order to broker peace, though Joanna has no say in this and is not even told about the plan. While Ian is away delivering this message of marriage while trying to rescue Barbara, the Doctor and Vicky try to keep in Richard's good books. Firstly, by disguising Vicky as a boy called Victor.
This is a young man.
His voice has not yet broken, Your Highness.
What is your name?
Victor.
Do you sing songs or play an instrument?
No, nobody ever showed me.
We must do something about your clothes.
Your Highness. Come, Victor, let us tend upon the others.
Though they're quickly rumbled by Joanna, who says they needn't have bothered. So why they decided to go this route in the first place is anyone's guess. Despite their lies, Joanna takes to the Doctor due to his charm and his charisma, and this dialogue is simply wonderful.
Can I help you, madam?
I am my brother's favorite, yet now I find I am excluded from his confidence. I sense he's made a plan of which I am a part.
May I ask why, of all people here, you've come to me?
There's something new in you, yet something older than the sky itself. I sense that I can trust you.
If there is a plan, milady, I will find out what it is and keep close in touch.
Then I am satisfied.
Due to this, the Doctor is brought in to advise and help Richard, but he comes to blow with Robert de Beaumont, the Earl of Leicester, played by John Bay, who wants to fight and see Saladin and his followers wiped out, something the Doctor cannot abide by, and he does a poor job holding his tongue.
Sire, with all the strength at my command, I urge you, sire, abandon this pretense of peace.
Pretense, sir? Here's an opportunity to save the lives of many men, and you do not but turn it down. Without any kind of thought. What do you think you are doing?
I speak as a soldier. Why are we here in this foreign land if not to fight? The devil's horde, Saracen and Turk, possess Jerusalem, and we will not wrest it from them with honeyed words.
With swords, I suppose.
Aye, with swords and lances or the axe.
You stupid butcher! Can you think of nothing else but killing,
You're a man for talk, I can see that. You're like a table in a ring of men. A parley here, arrangements there. But when you men of eloquence have stunned each other with your words, we the soldiers have to face it out. In some half-started morning while you speakers lie abed, armies settle everything, giving sweat, sinew, bodies, eye, and life itself.
I admire bravery and loyalty, sir. You have both of these. But unfortunately, you haven't any brain at all. I hate fools.
A fool can match a coward any day.
Enough of this!
Now, I normally don't like playing clips that long in these reviews, but my god, the dialogue's so good! Now, the cast are great, and Hartnell reportedly loved working with director Douglas Camfield, and it shows, but the problem is that there's not really any meaningful conflict here. King Richard is the main driving factor, and he agrees with the Doctor. It's the Earl of Leicester, someone who doesn't really have much sway in the situation, getting the dressing down here. The Doctor is not saving or changing history, he's not influencing the plot directly, he's just a very elaborate yes man. Now, he does that brilliantly, but there's no real conflict here. The Earl of Leicester ends up secretly leaking the plan to Joanna that her brother plans to wed her off, and this causes Richard to distrust the Doctor and Vicky. But the Earl just then outs himself as having done it, and by the time that happens, it's part 4 and the characters are leaving anyway. There's just not a lot for the cast to sink their teeth into. Vicky has to pretend to be a boy, but it's okay. The Doctor does not want a violent end to the crusade, and King Richard agrees. In part 1, the Doctor and Vicky steal clothes from a merchant, who in turn stole them from King Richard's court, so they might get in trouble, and it's okay, because they were stolen by someone under the Chamberlain's command, so it amounted to nothing. Like, these are fun scenes because they're written so brilliantly well in terms of the dialogue, but it kills the pacing because nothing's really moving the story forward or changing the state of play. Nope, if we want conflict, we're going to have to explore the subplots of our schoolteacher companions, as Ian is to act as an emissary for King Richard, which means he needs to be officially knighted, in what is, admittedly, an awesome moment for the character.
I have one duty to perform before you leave. Give me the sword, boy. You are without rank or title, and while we do not doubt your courage, our emissary shall speak from a proper position of authority. What is your name?
Ian Chesterton.
Kneel.
But kneel, my boy. Kneel. Come along.
In the name of God, St. Michael and St. George, we dub you Sir Ian, Knight of Jaffa. Arise, Sir Ian, and be valiant.
Your Majesty.
When Ian arrives, he learns from Saladin that Barbara is missing. As he searches, he's kidnapped by bandits, manages to escape the Scaphism torture where he's tied up in the desert, covered in honey until the ants devour him. He convinces his bandit captor to take him to Lydda, where Barbara is being held. In Lydda, she's found an ally in Harun, who has a score to settle with El Akir, who burned his house down, killed his wife and son, and stole one of his daughters. He's played by George Little, and it's not a huge role in the grand scheme of Doctor Who, but my god, does George Little play it like he's headlining the Royal Shakespeare Company. It's such an intense performance.
Last year, my house was a fine and happy place. A gentle wife, a son who honored and obeyed me, and 2 daughters who adorned whatever place they visited. Then El Akir came to Lydda and imposed his will. He desired my eldest daughter, Maimuna, but I refused him.
So he took her?
Yes. When Safia and I were away, he came and burned my house. My wife and son were put to the sword.
He's so committed and consumed by revenge, he goes out to scout the area, leaving Barbara alone with his other daughter, Sophia, and a knife. so that Barbara can do the unthinkable if the worst happens.
If danger threatens, Sophia will hide you. But if the soldiers persist in their search, and you think that they will find you, take this and use it.
Kill her?
Yes, and afterwards yourself.
No.
You must.
No. Life is better than this.
You do not know El Akir.
I couldn't do it.
You would not let them take Sophia.
No, of course I
then
would.
I leave the knife.
Now, Barbara is quite a passive character in this serial, where a lot happens to her, but there is something to be said for taking her so completely out of her normal element. Yeah, we've seen the Doctor rub shoulders with royalty before, and we've seen Ian have to fight his way and battle against the odds, but seeing Barbara have to sneak around cities, fight off guards, and engage in a potential suicide pact, this is definitely new territory for the character. But she finds herself kidnapped by El Akir again, but she manages to escape and hide in his harem. She's rescued by Ian, they meet up with the Doctor and Vicky, and they leave Palestine, safe in the knowledge that despite King Richard's determination, he will never set foot in the Holy City, and the Third Crusade will fail.
Are we going back to the ship?
As fast as our legs can carry us, my dear.
Doctor, will he really see Jerusalem?
Only from afar. He won't be able to capture it. Even now, his armies are marching on a campaign that he can never win.
That's terrible. Can't we tell him?
I'm afraid not, my dear. No, history must take its course.
Help me, Holy Sepulchre. Help me.
And that's kind of it. I'm disappointed overall, because The Crusade really has some incredible components to it. The performances are genuinely terrific. The dialogue is so meticulously well crafted. Douglas Camfield's camera work is great, with some brilliant shots and production design on display. But it doesn't really amount to much. There's not a lot of historical context present to complement the characters. There's not a lot of conflict other than find Barbara, and the numerous plot threads just jog in place until the mandated runtime is close to expiring. I don't want to just dismiss this serial, and I'm certain that someone out there, it's their absolute favourite, and I respect that, but it's a hard story to recommend as casual viewing. I definitely would not recommend The Crusade as an introduction to classic Who, or historical Doctor Who, or the Hartnell era in general. There's so many better pure historicals to watch, with much more to offer. I'm certain it has its passionate defenders, but I'm not one of them. This story just does not elicit much of a response from me, to be honest. Though in the grand scheme of Doctor Who history, this serial is noteworthy for it being during the filming of the 4 episodes that producer, Verity Lambert, decided that it was time for her to move on from the show, and it was time to appoint a replacement. I will say though that the post-broadcast history of The Crusade is an interesting one. The BBC junked the original tapes in the late 1960s, and the overseas prints were destroyed in the early 70s. However, somehow Part 3 managed to survive as a 16mm print and was retained by the BBC archives, meaning it could be sold and distributed on VHS, along with other incomplete serials as part of the Hartnell Years collection, presented by 7th Doctor Sylvester McCoy, who appears to have gotten lost in a prop storage warehouse and just decided to start giving the episode's context to a nearby camera.
Well, of course, Barbara wasn't executed in the final episode, and the Doctor and Vicky escaped by the skin of their teeth from being burned at the stake as sorcerers. The Crusade was written by Doctor Who's first script editor, David Whittaker, and is a good example of the purely historical stories which were entertaining, educational, and highly popular at the time.
However, in 1998, part 1 of the story, entitled The Lion, was found in the private collection of Bruce Grenville in New Zealand. Fan Neil Lambus confirmed the episode's legitimacy, and the story was promptly returned to the BBC for duplicating, with the original 16mm film print going back to Bruce. And just like that, an episode thought to have been lost forever was returned and released on VHS a year later, along with The Space Museum, with William Russell returning to the role as Ian Chesterton to provide linking narration 34 years after his last on-screen TV appearance.
The Doctor. He was old when I was young. Somehow I still feel he's up there in his lunatic ship, righting wrongs, still specializing in trouble. He dives in and usually finds a way out. He showed me so many things. So many. From the talking stones of Tyron to the witch trials of Salem. Oh, yes. We often got stuck in the past, caught up in history, as the old boy tried to find our way home.
But that's all for The Crusade, so join us next time as we go back to sci-fi, with the serial ending with the Doctor and his companions frozen in place in the TARDIS. They pay a visit to the planet Zeros and its famous space museum. I'll see you next time. Hey folks, I'm back on camera. I've more or less recovered from having the flu. Again, you probably heard in the audio of that review that my voice was not 100% up to par with normal, but we're on the road to recovery. Again. But if you enjoyed this review, be sure to hit that like button, it really helps me out, and also subscribe to keep up to date whenever I do another Hartnell Era review. And look who's decided to join us, it's Winnie! Honestly, because Winnie's appeared, you have to subscribe now, you have to hit that subscribe button, you've got to do it for Winnie. And also, if you want to make sure that Winnie gets fed, that she gets cat food, you can help to financially support this channel via Patreon. You should be able to see the names of all of my patrons right now. All of these people got this review several months early, while YouTube Content ID was sorting out its thing. Many of them also have access to a Mr. TARDIS Discord server, but I'd like to give a shout out to these particular patrons. Adam Grattan, Ben Langdon, Callum Baird, Cheaper City Blues, Dan the Dreamer Shill, Daniel Davis, Darkstar2189, Darren Carver-Bausiger, Dean Jones, Dr. Hadley, Dragonbugs, Dylan Whitaker, Evil Dalek 79, Finley Rude, Flipseed, Ginger Animator, James Ivory, Joseph Adams, Lard Dragon Ezra, Leela, Maria Bergman, Mario Fanboy 15, Matthew Perry, Michael Serrano, Miranda Logan, Nate Harris, Palex, Pat Andrews, Randall Sprinkle, Raven Woods, Reese Lloyd, Ross, Ryan Duncan, Samuel Whitaker, Scott Gerard, The Brit Sniper, The Doctor 14 Blu-ray Reviews, Timbo 1834, Toby Loxton, Will, and William Baker. Thanks so much to all of my patrons, thanks to you folks for watching this far, and I'll see you next time.